I can't stand this harasser. Because everything is legit on my car. Hey, he was dropping something off.
So why didn't you stop me there? Why did you pull off and then want something?
But all of a sudden, y'all want to do something today. What is the problem?
The silent pursuit began on a quiet residential street known as Davis Loop. A silver Chevrolet sedan moved away from a curb, merging into the flow of daily life in Oxford, Alabama. Behind it, a marked police cruiser shadowed the vehicle, maintaining a deliberate distance that was close enough to observe but far enough to avoid immediate detection. The officer behind the wheel did not activate his emergency lights immediately. He waited. He watched the vehicle navigate the turns, allowing the driver to travel several blocks away from the initial point of interest. This tactical delay is a maneuver often scrutinized in courtrooms, a technique that shifts the venue of a police traffic stop from a witness-rich neighborhood to a more isolated roadside. It effectively separates the driver from their support system, creating a psychological advantage for law enforcement before the first word is even spoken. As the Chevrolet turned onto the busier thoroughfare of 21st Street, the trap snapped shut. The blue and red lights flickered to life, signaling the driver to pull over. Inside the vehicle, a young black man watched the rearview mirror, with a sinking feeling familiar to many who have experienced driving while black. He had not been speeding. He had not run a red light. He had simply dropped an item off at a relative's house and driven away. Yet, he now found himself the subject of a roadside detention. He guided the car to the shoulder, the gravel crunching beneath the tires as he prepared for an interaction that could alter the trajectory of his life. Officer Stem, the primary initiating officer, exited his patrol vehicle and approached the driver's side window. His demeanor was casual, but his eyes were scanning, searching the interior of the car for anything that stood out. This visual sweep is standard procedure, but in the context of a pretextual stop, it is a hunt for probable cause. The officer informed the driver of the reason for the stop. It was not a moving violation. It was a parking infraction. The officer alleged that while on Davis Loop, the driver had parked on the wrong side of the road, facing against the flow of traffic. Under Alabama Code Title 32, Section 5A, 137, vehicles must be parked with their right-hand wheels parallel to the right-hand curb. The enforcement of this specific statute, minutes after the violation occurred and blocks away from the scene, raised immediate questions about the officer's true intent. If the parking was a safety hazard, the duty of the officer would have been to address it immediately. By waiting, the officer signaled that the parking was merely a key to unlock the door to a broader investigation. This is the hallmark of a fishing expedition police often utilize to bypass constitutional protections. They use a low-level, unassailable traffic error to seize a vehicle, hoping that the subsequent interaction yields evidence of a greater crime. The driver remained calm, handing over his license and registration. He did not argue the geometry of his parking. He simply complied. However, the officer's focus did not remain on the parking ticket. It shifted almost instantly to the vehicle's equipment. "The reason why I stopped you is because the tint," Officer Stem added, pivoting to a secondary justification. He pointed to the windshield, suggesting that the sun shading material extended too far down the glass. This technique of stacking violations is a common strategy. If the parking ticket feels weak or petty, a window tint ticket adds a layer of objective legitimacy to the stop. The officer claimed the tint violated the federal AS1 line standard, which marks the legal limit for windshield obstruction. The dynamic of the encounter shifted violently with the arrival of a second vehicle. The driver's mother, having seen the police following her son from the family home, pulled up to the scene. She did not arrive as a bystander. She arrived as a witness and a guardian. She stepped out of her vehicle with the energy of a woman who has seen this script play out before and refuses to accept the ending. She walked toward the officers, demanding to know why they had trailed her son for so long before initiating the stop. "Why didn't you stop me there? Why did you stop and then watch?" she asked, her voice cutting through the traffic noise. Her question was precise and legally poignant. It challenged the reasonableness of the delay. The officer attempted to deflect, claiming he stopped the car as soon as it hit the road. "Because I stopped you as soon as you hit the road," Officer Stem stammered. The mother rejected this timeline. She knew the geography of the neighborhood. She knew the distance between Davis Loop and 21st Street. She knew that the officers had ample opportunity to intervene at the source. "Why you just in line?" "I know. I don't want to hear that," she declared. cutting off his explanation. She recognized the delay for what it was, a tactic to isolate the young man. The officer, realizing his parking justification was failing to impress the mother, retreated to the window tint argument. The AS1 line is like right here. He gestured vaguely toward the windshield. The mother, refusing to be intimidated by the badge, demanded objective proof. Where is the line? Show me the line, sir, she insisted. This demand for physical evidence is the kryptonite of a bad cop exposed in a lie. The law regarding window tint is specific. It is not based on the officer's feeling. It is based on a measurable standard. If the manufacturer's AS1 line is not visible, the officer must have a calibrated tint meter to prove the violation. Officer Stem admitted. Most cars. Clearly marked on the windshield. I don't know if this is aftermarket windshield. He could not point to the line. He could not prove the violation. He was guessing. The mother seized on this uncertainty. Can you show me the line? That's what I asked you, she repeated. By forcing the officer to admit he could not locate the marker, she dismantled the probable cause for the equipment violation. She was effectively conducting a cross-examination on the side of the road, proving that mama protects son from police not just with emotion, but with facts. While Officer Stem was occupied with the mother's barrage of logical questions, his partner, Officer Demo, was engaged in a quieter, more insidious operation on the other side of the car. This technique, known as contact and cover, allows one officer to distract the guardians while the other probes the suspect. Officer Demo leaned into the passenger window, his tone conversational and disarming. Do you have any weapons in here? He asked the young driver. The driver responded in the negative. The officer then pointed to a bottle resting in the center console. What's that? He asked. The item in question was a detox drink. These beverages are legal. Over-the-counter supplements often sold at health food stores and gas stations. They are used for general health cleansing. But in the cynical worldview of narcotics interdiction, they are viewed as masking agents used to defeat drug screenings. The officer's interest in the drink was not casual. It was the pivot point he was looking for. He was attempting to build reasonable suspicion to extend the stop beyond the parking ticket. He asked, "You don't have any weapons? Anything at all?" Reinforcing the psychological pressure. Then came the critical moment, the trap that catches thousands of unsuspecting citizens every year. "You mind if I look?" Officer Demo asked, gesturing toward the interior of the car. The request was phrased as a polite inquiry, a favor between friends. In reality, it was a request to waive Fourth Amendment rights. A cop pulls over black man and asks to search. The pressure to comply is immense. The fear is that refusal will lead to violence or arrest. However, the law is clear. Without a warrant or probable cause, the officer needs consent. If the driver says yes, any limit on the stop's duration vanishes. The officers can tear the car apart, call for dogs, and detain the driver for an hour or more. The mother, hearing this escalation, realized the danger immediately. She understood that a search is never about clearing one's name. It is about finding something, anything, to justify an arrest. She stepped in, her voice rising to match the gravity of the threat. She explicitly forbade the search. "No, sir," she declared. She became the physical manifestation of the phrase, "never consent to search." She told the officers that there was nothing illegal in the car and that they had no right to rummage through it. Her intervention was the firewall that protected her son from an unlawful search and seizure. The officers were now in a bind. The primary officer could not find the tint line. The secondary officer had been denied consent to search. They had a parking violation that occurred blocks away and a bottle of fruit punch. Under the Supreme Court ruling in Rodriguez versus United States, decided in 2015, police cannot extend a traffic stop longer than necessary to address the original infraction unless they develop new reasonable suspicion. The presence of a legal drink and a mother's anger do not constitute reasonable suspicion. The clock was ticking, and the officers were running out of time. Officer Stem tried to regain control of the narrative. He returned to the tint, asking his partner if they had tint meters. "Demo, I was wondering if you all stuck, the temp meters in your vehicles," he asked. The response was telling. Yeah, we have them," Officer Demo replied. They had the technology to verify the tint, but they had chosen not to use it. Why? Because the tint was never the real issue. It was a pretext. Using the meter would have likely shown the tint was legal, ending their excuse to detain the driver. By keeping it vague, they kept the investigation open. The mother caught this contradiction too. "I don't know what that has to do with window tint," she remarked, exposing the chaotic logic of their investigation. Realizing that the fishing expedition police operation had come up dry, Officer Stem initiated the retreat. He decided to issue a verbal warning. "I'm going to give you a verbal warning for the tent," he announced. This is a common face-saving maneuver. It allows the police to leave the scene without admitting error, maintaining the illusion that they were doing the driver a favor. He then launched into a lecture about the parking direction, drawing diagrams in the air with his hands. "So, if you're parked here, it's with the flow of traffic, right?" he explained, trying to sound helpful. The lecture was a performance of authority for an audience that was no longer buying tickets. The mother listened, but she did not submit. She knew that the warning was worthless because the violation was dubious. "I made sure it was legal," she asserted regarding the window tint. She told the officers that she had paid a professional to install it 3 years prior and that it met all state requirements. She refused to accept their narrative that her son was in the wrong. She flipped the script on police accountability, promising to bring the vehicle and the tint certification to the police station herself. "I'm going to make sure I come to the courthouse, so you can see it," she vowed. This promise to follow up is a nightmare for officers relying on intimidation. It means the interaction will not disappear into the ether. It means a supervisor might review the bodycam footage. It means the cop lies during traffic stop report might be contradicted by physical evidence. The mother was not just defending her son, she was putting the department on notice. She told them, "Y'all don't even do your job. Well, all of a sudden, y'all want to do something today?" Calling out the selective enforcement that plagues minority neighborhoods, she pointed out that police often ignore serious crimes in the area, yet mobilized 2 units for a parked car. As the interaction wound down, the officers tried one last time to assert dominance. Officer Stem turned to the son, excluding the mother, trying to get a final word of compliance. "All right, man, take care," he said, handing back the license. But the mother had the final word. "Y'all is so full of it," she said, her voice shaking with the adrenaline of the confrontation. She told them they were making things up. She told them they were harassing a young man for no reason. And she was right. The officers walked back to their patrol car, leaving the mother and son on the side of the road. The encounter ended without handcuffs, without a ticket, and without a search. To the casual observer, it might look like a routine stop, but to those who know your rights traffic stop procedures, it was a narrow escape. It was a near miss with the criminal justice system, averted only by the quick thinking and fearless advocacy of a parent. The legal analysis of this event highlights the precarious nature of Fourth Amendment rights in America. The initial stop, while technically justified by the letter of the law regarding parking, teetered on the edge of constitutionality due to the delay. A reasonable person would question why an officer concerned about traffic safety would allow a hazard to exist, wait for the driver to leave, and then pull them over miles away. This behavior supports the argument that the stop was pretextual, a tool used to investigate the driver rather than the driving. Furthermore, the pivot to the window tint and the detox drink demonstrates how officers use totality of the circumstances to manufacture suspicion. A dark window becomes concealment. A health drink becomes drug paraphernalia. A nervous driver becomes evasive. Each of these observations is innocent on its own, but when woven together by a skilled prosecutor or officer, they can form a net that traps the innocent. The only way to cut through this net is to refuse to help weave it. By denying the search, the mother removed the most dangerous thread. The Fourth Amendment violation was avoided, but the police harassment was real. The psychological toll of being followed, stopped, and interrogated is significant. It reinforces the deep-seated mistrust between the Black community and law enforcement. When officers act as predators lying in wait rather than guardians of public safety, they erode the legitimacy of the badge. The mother's comment about the police watching criminal stuff happen without acting reflects a common grievance, that police resources are used to control the population rather than protect it. This video also serves as a critical lesson in the era of the police auditor. Citizens are increasingly filming police interactions, and this transparency is changing the outcomes. The officers knew they were being recorded, both by their own body cameras and likely by the citizens. This surveillance forces a degree of civility that might otherwise be absent. It prevents the physical escalation that leads to police brutality, but it does not stop the procedural abuse. The cop fails to find drugs, so he leaves with a warning. But the harassment has already occurred. The mother's actions provide a blueprint for resistance. She remained non-violent but non-compliant with their investigative requests. She demanded specifics. She asked, "Where is the line?" Instead of just accepting the officer's word, she asked, "Why search?" instead of just opening the door. These questions force the police to articulate their legal basis in real time. If they cannot, as Officer Stem could not, their authority begins to crumble. The Karen cop, or tyrant cop archetype, relies on submission. When met with an educated and firm refusal, they often fold. In the end, the system worked only because the citizens made it work. The Constitution did not protect the young man. His mother used the Constitution to protect him. She acted as his lawyer, his witness, and his shield. She prevented the illegal car search that could have turned a Tuesday afternoon into a felony charge. She exposed the racial profiling police tactics for the world to see, and she reminded everyone watching that rights are like muscles. If you do not use them, they atrophy. The silver Chevrolet merged back into traffic, leaving the officers behind. The AS1 line remained unmarked. The detox drink remained in the console. The parking violation remained a memory on Davis Loop, but the lesson remained etched in the digital record. Never consent, never waive your rights, and never assume the police are there to help you when the lights come on. The mother saved her son not by begging for mercy, but by demanding justice. She stood her ground, and in doing so, she stood for every citizen who has ever been bullied on the side of the road. The lingering question is, what would have happened if she had not been there? If the young man had been alone, surrounded by 2 armed officers asking to look inside his car, would he have had the strength to say no? Statistics suggest he might not have. He might have yielded to the pressure, allowing the fishing expedition police to succeed. This reality highlights the systemic imbalance of power during a traffic stop. The average citizen is not a legal scholar. They are conditioned to obey authority. Police are trained to exploit this conditioning to bypass the warrant requirement. This incident is a case study in why police reform advocates call for an end to pretextual stops. If the police want to enforce parking laws, they should write parking tickets on parked cars. Using a parking violation to conduct a roadside interrogation is a misuse of resources and a violation of public trust. It creates unnecessary friction and danger. The mother in this video understood this intuitively. She did not need a law degree to know that she was being played. She saw the game, and she refused to play along. Her defiance was not disrespect. It was democracy in action. She held the government agents accountable to the limits of their authority. She forced them to follow the rules they are sworn to uphold. In a world of bad cop exposed videos, this story stands out not for what went wrong, but for what went right, because a citizen refused to let it go wrong. She was the wall that stopped the nonsense cold. And for that, she is a hero of the highway. Her victory was quiet. No gavel, no settlement check, just the sound of an engine starting and a car driving away free. But in the context of American policing, driving away free is the ultimate victory.